switch over to things going on in heaven, and things going on amongst angels and demons and different things like that. And so what happens is you get these little snapshots of different things. But to understand why that's so significant, you have to understand the context of what's happening to Christians at that time. That what's happening to Christians at that time is they're really being severely persecuted. There's varying degrees of when this was written, but some people really view that, or some people would say that this was written when Nero or one of those emperors was in charge. And so Nero, if you don't know, was a very wicked man, that he would crucify Christians and burn them in his garden to light it, just walk in it. The Christians in that time were coming under tremendous persecution, that false teachers were coming into churches and leading them astray. So it's very interesting if you think about it, that God gives a book like Revelation at that time for Christians. Why does he? Why does this verse fall in that time? Well, here's what I just want to say, and then we can dive into it, that God knows that what's going to get them through the persecution and the trials and the mundanes and hardship of life is peeling back the curtain to give them a little glimpse of His majesty or His worthiness. That over and over and over again in Revelation, what God does is He kind of peels back the curtain and says, here's who I am, and here's what's ahead. Here's the promise coming. Here's what you need. You don't need another kind of inspirational message to get you across. Here's what He's saying. He's saying, to get you to understand and continually faithfully walking with me, you just need to see my worthiness. You need to see who I am in something bigger than you in your circumstance. You need to get a glimpse of my worthiness. And so that's what I'm hoping He does tonight. There's a lot of Christians, I'm sure, that at that time were asking the question, is it worth it? Right? You think if it's you at that time, it's like, man, my friend's like going to jail. Is like this really worth it? Do I really want to keep this thing going? And that's why over and over again in Revelation it talks about him who endures to the end will be saved. Him who does this will be saved. Him who fights to the end will be saved, is because God knows the temptation to give up. But that's a question that often we ask, isn't it? And is this really worth it? I grew up collecting basketball cards. Did anybody collect basketball cards when they were little? Yes. It makes me sad that a lot of you all didn't. So, if you don't know anything about basketball cards, there's this magazine that used to come out called Beckett. Yes, magazine. So, when I was little, what I would do is I would go and buy these cards, these stacks of cards. I used to love Michael Jordan, so I would collect Michael Jordan cards. I have like 143 in my mom's closet upstairs. But one of my favorite cards to get was a jersey card. Do I remember a jersey card? And so I had a Shaquille O'Neal Orlando Magic jersey card. And it was too good. But one of the things that when you went and traded on the playground, what I would do is I would wad up my magazine and I'd bring it with me, and I'd bring my little like trapper keeper with all my slots for my cards. And we would sit, and my friends would be like, we would pose trades. I'll trade you this card for this card. This card for this card. So what I do is I pull out a magazine, look up that card, how much is it worth? Look up this card, how much is it worth? Oh man, no, I'm not doing that trade. I'm not trading Sean Kemp for a Shaquille O'Neal. You guys probably don't know who that is, but it's okay. But every once in a while, you would get one of those really cool looking cards that I didn't even really care if it was worth anything, but it looked really cool. And so I actually traded my Shaquille O'Neal jersey card for a really shiny card that wasn't really worth a ton, but I loved it. Which is really interesting, because the value of that was nowhere near this, but there was something about that caught my attention and affections, I guess could say, that I was willing to give the other away. And so here's what I want to say tonight, is when you ask the question, is it worth it? Very often do you make the decision based on just facts. but you really do make it based on what you love, what you desire, what captures your heart, your mind. And so I could get up here tonight and tell you all the facts of why God is worth it, what He's done. He created the heavens and the earth from just speaking. That He holds your breath, that He gave you the breath that you have, and He will one day take it back. It's not yours. That He gave you the eyes to see the beauty that you do, but they were meant to point you to the Creator and worship Him. But you and I both know that we often lose sight of that, and our heart and our attention is divided elsewhere. So I want to do something a little bit different tonight, and I want to just do two things. I want to reframe that question a little bit based on a woman who you're going to hear at the end of this, Helen Roseveare. She has a famous quote about her life, and she talks about how she used to ask this question, is it worth it? Is it worth it? Is it worth it? Because we all do. But I want to reorient that, or I want to rephrase that for us tonight like she would. Not is it worth it, but is He worthy? Is He worth it tonight? Is He really worth your life? Is He really worth your affections and your desires? So I just want to do two things tonight. One is this: to help you see that our sin and your sin isn't just a result of circumstances, but it's a result of you not believing or seeing that He really is worthy. That the reason we sin is not just because of circumstances, but because we fail to see that He's actually worthy. And two, to convince you that God is fiercely committed to showing you over and over and over again that He really is worth it. Or to phrase it another way, He really is worth your life. So, first one, we sin because we don't understand the worthiness of God. So it's really interesting if you read this article, and I can send it to you all, with this woman with this ring. There's a quote where it says she didn't understand the value of the diamond because it didn't shine like she thought a real diamond would. So the reason why she didn't take it in 30 years ago is because it didn't look like she thought a real diamond should. Man, if we thought on that a little bit about our relationship with God, how much that would change. How often do we get caught up with things that are unbelievable or wonderful because they become familiar or ordinary, right? Let me get at this. You know when you have like really, really good food? And you're like, man, this is unbelievable. And you have it for a little bit of extended time, it becomes what? Just ordinary, right? It's just food. Or to put it this way, that some of you all will know this, but we have a thing called the muck where we go and have all this food. And it never fails. With like the first month, freshmen will be like, man, we got Chick-fil-A. We have this thing called, Boss Burger or whatever. And then you talk to them like November or December, and they're like, I gotta get home. This food is terrible.
Lindenwood Live.
Right?
I haven't been since every day.
Yep. Why does that happen? It becomes familiar. It becomes ordinary. That there's something within the human heart that we can be exposed to something so beautiful and wonderful that if given amount of time, it becomes ordinary. It becomes mundane. It becomes familiar to us, and so it loses its awe. And our affections begin to drift elsewhere. What's the next thing that can catch my awe? What's the next thing that can catch my wonder? What's worthy of my life? So many of us will understand, man, the gospel, Christ has come and paid my penalty. I can't believe it. Like Colton was saying, that we see the gospel and it completely changes our life, but then slowly but surely, after a while, what happens? Yeah, I know God died for me. Yeah, I know Christ paid my penalty. But I still kind of want to give my life to this. I still want to do this. It becomes familiar. God becomes ordinary to us. I know what God says about purity, but I still want to treat men and women the way I want. God's ordinary. He's like me. He understands. Yeah, I know what God says about loving and fighting to love Him with all my heart and all my mind and all my body and all my soul. But He knows I really want this. I really want it. Is God really that good that He deserves all of me? I mean, that's a lot to ask. So something that once, when you saw the beauty of, you couldn't believe it. Some of you, when you were working through the testimony workshop last night, you were drawn back to that moment where you saw, man, the God of the universe, He loves me. But the condition of the human heart is often, unless we realize it, it begins to grow cold and distant because of that. It's kind of like this. Some of you guys don't know this, but when you buy a ring, engagement ring, do you know what they do to kind of sell a ring to you? Do you know what they do? They put your ring, or the diamond or the ring that you're going to buy, over like a black velvet background. The idea being that if you put even the smallest diamond on a black velvet, it will pop. So you got like an itty bitty like little crumb on there. And the guy will be like, oh man, I gotta buy this, it's so beautiful. And then you take the black velvet away from it and it's like, man, this thing is tiny. Right? Why does it pop? Because it's against the black backdrop. The reason you and I often lose our wonder and our sense of awe of God is because we forgot the black backdrop of the gospel. That we forget the brokenness and the sin that we were once confronted with when we considered the gospel. I've been walking with God for a little while. I've been doing my quiet times. I've changed. I'm not doing this, but I am doing this. But we miss the fact that we were once hopelessly alienated from God. So it becomes ordinary, familiar, that I'm not as bad as that person. I don't do this. My relationship looks a whole lot more pure than it did. But what happens is slowly but surely the black backdrop begins to fade away, and that diamond that once seemed so precious becomes kind of insignificant or small. In the Old Testament, over and over again, what God would do is He would go to the people of Israel and He would remind them of a couple things. He would rescue them, and then He would come to them and He would say, okay, I've rescued you, I've done it, not these other gods. Now fear me and serve me and love me. But don't forget that I've saved you. And so He would remind them over and over and over again, because He knew that they would forget the black backdrop. Think about this. Israel were slaves in Egypt. God saved them, parted the Red Sea. They walked through. A little bit later down the road, do you know what happens? They complain to Moses and say, Moses, we're in this desert. It was better than when we were slaves. We had food to eat. And you read that and you're like, what in the heck are they thinking? Like, have they forgot the story? They were slaves. being whipped. But you think about it more carefully, how often is that us? God, why are you doing this? Don't you love me? But what God also did is He also began to say, not only did I save you, but I want you to begin to look a little bit different. So you read the Old Testament, you read Leviticus and Deuteronomy, and you have all these kind of weird laws that God's put in place. And part of it is because the other countries or other nations around Israel were to see that they were living so differently that they were to look on and be like, who is this God? Why do they live this way? That they were to look on Israel and say, this God is worthy of something. Look at the way He's blessing them and working in them. That as Israel remembered what God has done, as Israel began to see who has saved them and begin to orient their life around that, other nations would look at them and say, we want to be like them. Tell us more about this God. And so they call it us today at the church is similar. That God is beginning to say, does your life orient around my worthiness? Does my worthiness begin to conform your life? So when people ask you, why do you treat men and women or the opposite sex the way you do? We're meant to say, because He's worthy. Why do you handle money the way you do? Because He's worthy. Man, I notice you use your time differently because He's worthy. That over and over and over again, when people look at our life, the same thing that God asked Israel in the Old Testament, He's telling you today, telling me, and am I worthy? Well, would your life reflect that? And so that gets me to my last point. That God is fiercely committed for you to see His worthiness. So the question then doesn't become, because I know some of us will, in this room, begin to say things like this. Okay, I haven't been doing this. I know I need to read my Bible. I know I need to share my faith. I know I need to do this. But like anything, after a while, it'll just become ordinary and familiar, and we'll stop doing it. But what really will capture your heart and your affections and your wonder? What really will make you see that He's worthy? Flip with me, if you have your Bibles, to Matthew 25. And I'm going to read verses 46, 45, and 46. Ooh. I said that wrong. Matthew 27, 45 through 46. All right. Now from the 6th hour, there was darkness over all the land until the 9th hour. About the 9th hour, Jesus cried out with a loud voice, saying, Eli, Eli, lama sabachthani. Blah, blah, blah. That is, my God, why have you forsaken me? Look at verse 45 with me. Now from the 6th hour, there was darkness over all the land until the 9th hour. What is God doing for you and for I? He's showing you the black backdrop. What other way would He be showing you than making the sky dark and putting the most horrific but yet beautiful thing that has ever happened on display for all to see? Do you want to know what's worthy? Do you want to know what's beautiful? Do you want to know that when you look at me, that when all the angels were saying, worthy are you, God, of praise and honor? Do you want to know what that looks like? This. That God is putting forward the diamond for you to see. and behold. That when you would begin to see the black backdrop of your sin and my sin, and you would look to the cross, begin to see the one who in Revelation 4, the angels say, "Worthy are you, God, of all honor and praise, for you created all things, and in all things you hold them together." That same God became a man to die for you. The same God who holds the fibers of the earth and all the atoms together is the God who became a man and hung on the cross against the black backdrop of the world's most horrendous event that has ever happened. So do you want to know what's going to capture your wonder this summer? Do you want to know what's going to convince you of God's worthiness? It isn't going to be you waking up and getting in the Word and making sure you're doing all the right things. That'll help. But it's going to be as you do these things, meeting the God of this. The God who, when you wake up, you think, I can't wait to get up and get in the Word with Him. I want to meet this God. So when people at Elitch and people in your room begin to say, "Man, I noticed this person did this to you, and I can't believe you acted this way. Why did you act this way? How could you love them?" Because He's worthy. Don't you know what He's done for me? Don't you know how He's pursued me and sought me? I want to pursue Him. And when God begins to press into you, am I worth it? Am I worth it? That you really could look to the black backdrop and say, "Of course, Lord. Look what you've done. Look how you've pursued me and sought me." So do you see how the framework this summer, that if you begin to ask the question, like we do when we come down to a project, some of us, "Man, I'm coming, I'm considering a project, is it worth it?" Well, it's worth it. So you get down here and you begin to think, okay, it's really early, or this is really tough. Man, is this really worth it? At some point you're going to say no. Right? Like, honestly, it's like, nah, man, no, this isn't worth it. But if you're going to flip the phrase, "Is He worthy?" Of course He is. Then it's going to reorient my life. How could it not? Look at what the angels say. Look at when the angels, and we get peeled back in Revelation, we get a picture of the worthiness of God. Of course He is. Don't you know what He's done and who He is? And so one thing we're doing this summer is we want to continue to put forward heroes of the faith for you and begin to shape and give you people that are actually living this out. And so there's a woman named Helen Roseveare that was a missionary to the Congo, and right? Congo, yeah, that's what I thought. I thought I heard someone say no. I was like, I thought she was. But to give you kind of a background of who she is, she was a medical missionary, and she was there when the Congo had kind of an uprising. And she alludes to it, but she was there, and basically several things happened. She had manuscripts burned that she was working on translating for the people of where she was at. She also was brutally raped by rebels in that country twice. And she begins to frame this for us. She is someone that, when I was thinking about this talk, and a lot of us, our staff, while we framed the summer worthy, is she's just someone that exemplifies it. And so I wanted to play a brief clip from her talking about kind of this instance. So you'll hear her talk about this horrific night that happened with her. But I wanted you to hear more of her heart. And I wanted you to see a woman who lived to 91, and at the end of her life was still saying the things that she was now. So she finished well. And so I would love to play this clip for you, and then I'll get back up and end it.
So I wanted the last few minutes just to handle that question. Is it worth it? I was always asking this question, is it worth it? Is it worth putting Jesus first? On the night of 29th of October, back in 1964, in the middle of the rebellion, when I was a prisoner, it was a very wicked night, terrifying night. I was taken captive by these evil men. A dark night, I was desperately, humanly speaking, alone. And I had fear. Deep, deep fear. What were they going to do to me next? And in that moment, I felt God. I never lost faith in God, but I just felt that God had left me to it. I couldn't seem to reach through to God. And I felt He was demanding of me more than I could pay. And in that minute, I think if someone had said, is it worth this? I would really have been tempted to say, no. My back was to the wall. I was terrified. I couldn't stand it. And then, in the midst of that night, in the midst of the wickedness, it's taking me a few minutes to say it, but it was a split second, I was suddenly, overwhelmingly conscious that God was there. I did not see a vision, I did not hear a voice, I just knew that God was there. He was in charge, He was in control, He did know what was happening. It was almost as though He put His arms around me. He said, 20 years ago, you asked me for the privilege of being a missionary. This is it. Don't you want it? I think I wanted to say no. but you can't say no to God, can you? And He then went on. And He whispered to me that night. I was driven down the corridor of my home. I knew it was evil, probably about 1 a.m., just one wicked, evil soldier, gun loaded, pressed on my back, pushing me down the corridor. And into that situation, God said a very interesting phrase to me. Can you thank me? I thought, no. You can't thank God for evil. God did not ask me to thank Him for evil. He said, can you thank me for trusting you? That's amazing. I always think of you and me trusting Him. But the thought that He was trusting me for something. In other words, He could have taken me out, He could have rescued me, He could have saved me from the situation, but He had a program in which He was inviting me to take part. He says, can you thank me for trusting you with this experience, even if I never tell you why? Let me say that again, because it's a little different than some other people they say it. Can you thank me for trusting you with this experience, even if I never tell you why? And somehow in the middle of that night, in the middle of the evil, by myself, I was able to say, God, I don't know what you're saying, I don't know what you're trying to do, I don't know who will benefit from this, but yes, if you have a program, and this is part of it, thank you, God, for trusting me. And immediately, right in the midst of all the evil, I had an overwhelming sense of peace. Now, it didn't take the fear away. The fear was still there, but it was flooded with peace. And through all the wickedness of that night, the pain, humiliation, wickedness, but there was this amazing sense of privilege. God was actually inviting me to share with Him in the fellowship of His sufferings. And He said to me, will you change the question? Instead of always asking, is it worth it? When you and I say, is it worth it? We're thinking of the price we think we have to pay. Will you turn it round and say instead, and in English it sounds almost the same, instead of saying, is it worth it? Will you say, is He worthy? And oh dear friends, When we ask that question, whatever comes, whatever happens, whatever the suffering, whatever the torture in your mind, whatever the endless anxieties, is He worthy? Yes. He died for me. He's worthy of anything I can give Him, always. You'll never say no. If you say, is it worth it? There'll come a day you'll say no. But if you say, is He worthy? You'll never say no. Yes. He's worthy of all the love you can give Him. He's worthy of any sacrifice you can make for Him. He's worthy of your trust, whatever comes into your life, in all the different circumstances. Yes, He's 100% worthy. And with that, there comes this overwhelming sense of privilege. May the Lord bless each one of us as we go forward into another year with a sense of the privilege of being a Christian. It is a privilege. Privilege of being called to be His ambassador.
Worthy are you, Worthy are you, O Lord and God, to receive glory and honor and power. For you created all things, and by your will they existed and were created. Is He worthy? Is He worthy to you? Let me pray. Jesus, I pray that we would taste your worthiness. That it wouldn't just be some intellectual knowledge that we know, but that God, you would let us experience it so much that it would reorient our loves. That we really would see that you are worthy. That we would believe it. That we would trust it. God, would you raise up a generation of men and women that are willing to live and die for this? To give their life to this and for this. You're worth it. You really are worth all glory and honor and power. So we really do want to thank you for giving us the privilege of learning about you and knowing you this summer. May we not lose sight of that. Pray this in the name of Jesus for your glory. Amen. Well, what I want to do is I want to take the next few moments and I want you to silently consider this and pray through this. We're going to be doing this after each TKO, but I have a couple questions I want you to pray through and I want you to consider. So the questions are this.
They're gone.
I think I have them up there.
They're gone.
They're gone? Okay. Okay. First question. What first captivated you by the gospel? What first captivated you by the gospel? What, or to put it another way in our language, what made you see that God was worthy? Remember, what first captivated you by the gospel? What about God made him seem worthy to you? Second question. In what ways or areas of your life might God be asking you, am I worthy? In what ways or areas of your life might God be asking you, am I worthy? We'll take the next few minutes to consider that and pray through it. And then the band will get up and lead us in some worship.